welcome. Alex here from the Siebel Hub. So in this presentation, I would like to do two things. First, introduce you to devpops for Siebel CRM, which we will look at from a implementation perspective, and we'll tell you about the reasons for devpops and reasons to use it and reasons not to use it. And in the second part, in the second video in this series, we will take a look at the actual code implementation. So if you're just interested what devpops can do, please watch this video. And if you're interested in how we do it, that's a Siebel Open UI implementation, then go for the second video. You find the link in the description. So what is devpops? Devpops is a collection of educational samples for Siebel Open UI. So it's for learning Siebel Open UI first and foremost. But it is also a collection that shows how to use Siebel Open UI extensions to facilitate common developer tasks, such as inspecting a workspace, for example, or testing eScript. So it is two things. You can use it to learn OpenUI, advanced OpenUI techniques, and you can also use it under a very big caveat to improve the developer experience of Siebel. devpops has grown out of a community effort of the Siebel Hub community and is open source, so you can find it on GitHub. So if you follow the link in the description, you will get to the devpops repository on GitHub. Before you use any of this, make sure you understand the README document. So we are currently on the 22.2 version at the time of this recording, and read about the features that are implemented, which we'll see in that video. And there's also installation steps that you can follow and you need to follow if you want to see devpops on your environment. It's very important that we understand that devpops is a strictly educational open source delivered as is under the MIT license source code. You shall never use it in any mission critical environment, and there is no guarantee and no support whatsoever. So it's purely educational. To learn how to use Siebel Open UI, how to do something, and not to use devpops just blindly and then find out it's not for you. So in the next few minutes, we will go backwards in time from the 22.2 update, look at features that we have implemented in that update, and then we go back in time and look at all the features in total that devpops implements at the moment. So in the latest release of devpops, we have two features, X-ray data export and the Psych Map. So let's take a look. X-ray is a feature that has been around for a while. You find a separate version on GitHub as well. And in devpops, we have implemented a special X-ray version. Later in this video, there's a demonstration of X-ray proper, as we're going back in time. So if we are looking at the X-ray silent mode feature, as shown here in the demo, there's a new options dialog, allows us to, well, turn X-ray data export on or off and clear any X-ray data or not before we run it. So the silent mode executes all the three X-ray modes, getting control information, getting business component, field information, and tables and columns. And if X-ray export is enabled, then we get this dialog with all the applets in the current X-ray data set. You can deselect applets, you can include or not include few data to export, And once you click OK, the data is actually copied to your clipboard. So if you open, for example, Microsoft Excel and paste your clipboard content, you have a nice formatted table ready to use, which gives you all the control level information, each control of every applet, with all the downstream information down to the database, table, and column. And of course, you can go about in Excel or any other tool to play around with that data, format the spreadsheet, and use it in your project. So again, we'll take a look at the X-ray feature itself a little bit later in this video, but this is a new 22.2 feature. And if you paste it into a non-spreadsheet application, you will get a tab-separated file for use in any other application really that you can import that data and make it useful. So now for the Psych Map. The Psych Map is the sitemap that leaves you psyched. So the demo here shows the right click on the sitemap button. And if you have a very large sitemap, such as SATMAP, could be a bit slow, but here we are in a searchable menu style sitemap. Notice the application stays open and you can still navigate hierarchically using the filtered sitemap. So here we go to the enterprise profile configuration view, for example. There's another right click. The Psych Map saves recently used views, so you can always go back to views you just recently visited. The tooltip shows you the screen name and then the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is preserved. And this is, for example, a navigation to the account list, account summary view. So the full navigation, up to 4 levels, is preserved. There's an options button. You can choose between menu and flat mode. So if you save that flat mode, application reloads. And now if you right click, you get a, well, what looks like the original sitemap, but is with a twist. So again, you have that contains search. So anything you type here will still preserve the hierarchy, and you have the recently used panel. And still you could use this more sitemap style navigation. So that's the Psych Map. Another right click here showing the recently used views. And of course we still have left click, and this shows the original vanilla sitemap, just for honorable mention here. So the 21.6 update brought us also a few features that might be new to you. So we start with the Web Tools Online Help. And we will take a look at the Redwood banner and the property set viewer that have been introduced in June 21. So Web Tools Online Help is a feature that allows you to go from the Web Tools Online Help menu directly to the real version-sensitive Siebel Tools Online Help on the internet, something that the vanilla application up to the time of this recording does not do. So it's an enhancement of Web Tools, and it showcases how to modify standard menu items to point somewhere else. So that's an interesting implementation. And also it showcases that we can modify Web Tools, and we'll talk about this in the second video, actually how to implement and why or why not to do it. So let's see it in action. So we are logged into Web Tools here. You already see the devpops extension if you look at the banner, and here's Help Online Help. And it opens a new tab with the version sensitive help. So we are using Siebel 22.2 and the online help with all the tools documentation is 22.2. Let's prove that. Technical support shows clearly that's a 22.2 Siebel environment. The Redwood banner is a playful approach of customizing your Siebel application just in the banner, so the menu bar, basically the main top toolbar, and that is for web tools and also application. In web tools you get a random Redwood inspired banner background that is actually moving slowly, so it gives you a nice cozy look and feel. And in the application you have a menu option to turn it on or off. So this showcases how to modify your look and feel of the application dynamically, not using CSS. devpops does not use CSS style sheets, and we explained that in the second video. And let's have a look at it. So in Web Tools we can see the banner in action already, and when you change the view, the banner is reloaded with a randomly selected background item. In the application you can go to the devpops menu and click Redwood banner, and it will load randomly the banner background. And you also have the option to turn it on permanently using the flip switch next to Redwood banner. So when you log back in or when you navigate to different views, you will get randomly selected Redwood inspired backgrounds. Very nice indeed. Another feature introduced in the 21.6 release of devpops is the property set viewer. It's in beta mode, so it's not very stable, but it showcases how to visualize hierarchical property sets in the browser. It's one attempt at doing this dynamically, and we shall look at this a little bit later when we take a look at the business service runner feature. Still going back in time, so 21.5 introduced also some features in devpops that you might be new to, related to test automation. So there's test automation support and a test automation setup wizard, experimental. We have a user responsibility check, and we introduced code separation. So test automation support means that you can actually use the Siebel test automation recording and playback on top of devpops. So the reason we are doing this in devpops is to showcase how to instrumentalize the automation tags for custom DOM elements using JavaScript. So whenever you create a custom button or dialog, then you want to use test automation, you have to make sure these automation tag attributes are present. And we'll see just how this works in the second chapter. So let's take a quick look. For example, we start that service runner, which is a big custom dialog with custom fields and custom drop-downs and buttons. If you inspect any of these fields and buttons, we'll find out the automation tags UN, username, OT, object type, and RN, repository name, are populated with correct values, so tests can be recorded on top of the custom business service runner, and tests can be run, played back, testing the business service runner functionality. If you want to check if your system is enabled for test automation, recording and playback, there's a bunch of settings you need to verify. And the test automation wizard showcases how to use custom OpenUI customizations to enable a wizard of sorts that checks various places in the system and gives you graphical feedback and a list of things you need to do. So let's check that out. So you find a menu item, test automation check in the devpops menu that runs the wizard. So it first checks UPT settings. It offers you to make changes. You can click OK or skip as we do here. Then it goes about and checks the server parameters. That will take a while. It uses the server manager connection, we'll see later. So here it says, okay, this parameter is set correctly. It's all green. And next step is to show you which component, which server and component to actually continue checking. So you can select your servers and components here. Click continue. It goes about, checks the server component settings. And that's all green. The enable automation parameter set to true. Now it checks the action set runtime events, all green on this system. The workflow process is active and DISA is reachable. There are a few to-dos remaining, so you can take this to your team. The code separation means that if you're using older versions of devpops, there was just one single file. Actually, it was all in the postload.js file. And now the code is separated since 21.5, which means only the portions required for the web tools and generic stuff is in the postload.js file. We'll talk about this in the second video. And there is now a devpops.js file for all other application-specific code. The 21.4 release, going back in time, was significant as we added a lot of features into devpops for web tools, register view with a button, screens menu, persistent storage, fast inspect features, menu persistence, and the break-free demo for showing different approaches with form applets. So let's check out these features. So developers can dream, and sometimes dreams come true. Who wouldn't want a feature when you create a new screen view in Siebel Tools or Web Tools to just press a button and the view is registered with your preferred responsibility or a new one immediately, so you can start testing. You don't have to go to the application, register the view, the responsibility, clear cache, etc. So it would be a great time saver. And Web Tools sort of gives us the ability to modify it. And again, that's a topic for the implementation video, part 2. And devpops shows that you can do it. It doesn't say you should do it, but you can do it and use the REST API, for example, to create that view and responsibility registration. So let's take a look. So in Web Tools, I'm creating a workspace here, just as you do, to create a new view. So bear with me on this one. Okay, that workspace is created, and we do a very simple demo. So I'm just copying an existing view to create a new one. So go to views. Let's find the, well, let's use the account list view. So finding that standard view, then copy the record. Control B is the shortcut that is used here, and name the copy. Okay, so that's a new view. It's not registered with any responsibility yet. So now we have to add it to a screen. And we, just for the sake of demo, we use the account screen. And we add it as a new screen view. All in the comfort of Web Tools. You already see the button here, but let's first create a new view. So the screen view, that is. Let's make it an aggregate view, possibly. And let's just take care of the bare necessities, a view bar text, just for demo, and a menu text. Okay, let's step off the record to save it. And now comes the new button. So that's what devpops does. Register view button. First time you have to provide your credentials for the REST calls. Now you can select responsibilities or add a new one like we do here. That's a new responsibility. You click register and you get a success message. So if you would look in the application, go to views and responsibilities, you would see the same records you would have to enter manually, so just from Web Tools. And we're still in the developer workspace, and now we can use the fast inspect in the application. Right click on the workspace icon. It opens the developer workspace. Notice the red text standby for cache refresh. So fast inspect has recognized, okay, there was a screen change. So it reloads the caches. And now if we go to accounts, we already see the navigation item for the view and we can use it. No need to log out and log in. No need to go to lengthy view registrations. Cool. Another playful thing that we do in devpops with Web Tools is we add a custom menu. So of course, showcasing the possibility of adding custom menus, whole dynamic menus, into any Siebel application. Now, Web Tools is special. You shouldn't customize it, and we can't add screens, etc. So this is a bit of a backstory. So first, Siebel Tools has a screens menu. So the classic Siebel Tools application. And back in time, really old Siebel application, Siebel 2000, had a screens menu as well. So this was basically our Psych Map. In case you wonder why it says in the application, screen menu items. There was a screens menu, so that's why we call it a retro item here, retro customization. And so we add a screens menu, but where do the screens come from? Actually, Oracle has added screens to Siebel Web Tools, to the Siebel Web Tools application. They are not visible, but we make them visible because we can, and possibly a bad idea, but it's showcasing OpenUI possibilities. And of course, you can create a menu that doesn't show screens, you can create a menu that shows anything in any application using Siebel OpenUI. That might be a bit weird, but you have heard the backstory here. So we want to have a dynamic screen menu. So notice there's a recent views. Recently used views should be remembered. So adding a nice touch to it, and you can modify the recently used list by deleting items. So let's take a look how this works in real life. So you see the screens menu, and there's the recent views that we used, and there's all the screens that are in the vanilla Siebel Web Tools application. And the fun part is they work. So you can navigate those views, and wow, enterprise profiles in Siebel Web Tools, that's totally weird. And it's now a recent view, so you can navigate quickly. What about Business Service Simulator? Yes. Wow. Okay. You can do it, not saying you should do it. Now right-click any of these items and you can delete the recent items from the list. I might need to reopen the screens menu to refresh it. There you go. Now in the previous demo, we have seen a custom screen menu with recently used views, and that's of course on a user basis. You want to store that somewhere. So if you think about the technical implementation, where to store that? Browser storage, probably not a good idea. User preferences, it's complicated. What storage do we have in Siebel? Oh wow, we have a big, powerful database with even custom tables, lots of storage there. So why not use the database? And the devpops storage uses the database. We even use standard tables, a very, well, dangerous thing to do maybe, but it works. You could use custom tables, of course. We just need a column to store a lot of text, JSON text. And the following demo shows that. So we do have an item in devpops menu, devpops storage. That goes to the client business service screen. As we use the client-side business service table, it messes the view a little bit, as you would notice, and you find some items here used by various modules of devpops already. So here's the recent views for SAdmin in WebTools. There's a pretty print button, and you can, of course, well, go about and modify the JSON configuration here, or use the REST API that's built on top of it to modify that. So Fast Inspect is, of course, one of the most powerful features of devpops. It goes by kudos to xapuk, a Siebel friend in the Siebel Hub community. And the Fast Inspect allows you to right-click the dashboard button and get a list of recent workspaces and their versions, and just click the workspace or version, and in the application, open and inspect that workspace immediately. So we have seen that in action in a previous demo. And with 21.4, we added a few options for that fast inspect, because that's a very powerful feature, but with power comes great responsibility and also a margin for error. So to open the fast inspect options, open fast inspect, right click the dashboard and you click options, and you have 3 different options. Usually the default ring of fire option is fine, but you can choose between Great Balls of Fire and Armageddon, which are experimental. So in case anything goes wrong during fast inspect, you can try these 2 alternative options, and you can save the changes for just the current view or apply it to the whole application. devpops also shows how to create a highly customizable menu that can be turned into a toolbar, as you can see on the screenshot. So the devpops menu behind the bug icon in the application is very versatile, and in 21.4 we added the feature of persisting that menu state. So either it's a toolbar or detached, and the position is retained across sessions. And here we have a demo. So you can switch or rotate it into a toolbar fashion, which is movable, draggable. And now I've switched to toolbars. I'm logging out of the session and log back in. And what we hope to see is that, well, the state of the menu is preserved. So it's a toolbar at the same position. Nice. Now, devpops is a playground for many things. So in one version, we introduced a break-free demo. So that will be showed in the actual live demo later. So break-free allows you to break free literally of the strict table layout for form applets. So even if it's grid layout, there's a table rendered in the document object model. So break-free breaks free of that. And in 21.4, we added a demo how to make applet layouts customizable inside the application and save that customization. So that's worth a demo, of course. So let's see that in action. Here we have a very big, let's call it improvable form applet in the standard application, and we can break free, for the current view, or we can enable it permanently. We're using the flip switch. Right click on the button to get that flip switch. And after breaking free, the applet layout changes drastically. The algorithm takes the form sections into accordions and creates a responsive grid or flex layout actually using CSS. So the applet is not just redesigned, but also now completely responsive if you would resize your screen or use it on different devices. And there's an edit layout button. And if you click that, you go into edit layout mode, quite literally, in the live application. You can resize elements, such as the product name here. And you can click an option button, and you have to use standard CSS, so there's no help in typing that, but if you know CSS or copy paste stuff. So let's change the font. Let's change the borders. So that's pure CSS you can add here as rules. And there's a preview button. Okay, so that looks better. Let's do something with the color. So let's make this light green, for example. Preview again. Okay, we're happy with the changes. We save that. So we have customized one element. You can drag and drop elements, such as, well, let's take this serialized flag and we can put it in the upper section. Resize it a little bit. Now it's a bit wide. And also we can change the appearance using CSS. So for example, let's change the CSS to use a very new CSS rule, accent color, green. So when the checkbox is checked, it's green. Okay, save this and reload. Whenever you open the view again, these changes are retrieved, and they are retrieved from the devpops storage that we have discussed previously. Okay, so let's take a look at the storage. So we have been to the devpops storage before, but here's the RWD, the responsive web design factory applet configuration stored for this specific applet. It could be on a user basis even. And you see the sections, the fields within the section. You can modify the code here if you want to, but you can do it by drag and drop as we have demonstrated. And there's an override section which has the CSS overrides. So everything is stored in this kind of extra layer of metadata and not in the repository. So it's, for example, also not related to workspaces. That's maybe for at another time. Now we're going back in time, and one of the first features that appeared in devpops was the web tools Whodunnit. And that's again a extension of web tools which can't officially be extended. So devpops goes beyond what's possible here, and you should decide for yourself if you want to, well, learn from that. Let's put it that. It's not saying you should do it, but we show what's possible with a little bit of effort with Siebel Open UI. So WebTools Whodunnit shows who is currently editing an object and in what workspace and what version of the workspace. Very useful indeed if you consider different developers working independently in their workspaces, but it would be good to see, okay, that object, that business service, somebody else is currently editing as well, so I better talk to that person maybe what they're doing exactly, so not to create any code conflicts, etc. So let's see it in action. All right, we are going to Siebel Web Tools here, and I'm here as a developer 1 user. So developer 1 is the current user logged into WebTools in a first WebTools session, creating a workspace here. So let's see what developer 1 is about to do. So a business service shall be modified. And we pick a random, well, not so random, we pick the ELISA business service, a very useful victim, and we simply change the comments. That's a change already, so we change the object. Developer 1 has touched the ELISA business service. Now in an incognito window, I go to another session of WebTools as a different user, developer 2. And well, have to create a workspace first. That's a workspace created for developer 2. And what does developer 2 have in mind? Well, working on the same business service, so as of course. So simply querying for ELISA and clicking the name, you already see 2 people are working on ELISA currently. That's dev1 and myself in a different workspace. So I have already started that, have forgotten about the workspace, was before my vacation or so. And that's developer 1 seeing the same information after clicking the record. So clicking the record triggers the retrieval of that data. So very useful, that's the Whodunnit feature, but we want to understand how it works. So there's a view included in devpops, the modified objects view, which gives you, using standard tables, by the way, gives you a visual representation of what's going on in your development environment. So we see the latest changes, including that ELISA change. So let's query for the ELISA business service. So indeed, it's touched 2 times by developer 2 a while ago and developer 1 just recently. So 2 records in editable state. So that's what you see in WebTools. That's projected into the WebTools writable column. Now developer 2 makes a real change in that new workspace. Okay, and saves that. And so now there's a 3rd icon displayed. When you hover, you see the name of the developer, name of workspace, and version. And in the modified objects view, you also have 3 records now for ELISA. Now that modified objects view has a few other features that I would like to show you here. For example, you can click on an object name and it makes a REST call and retrieves the current configuration as a JSON object. So this is a REST return, so it's no children by default, but we see the comments. That was dev2. And if you click the same element, the 2nd line, like the developer 1, it opens a comparison window, bottom of the view. And in that comparison window, you can clearly see what is the difference between the 2 versions, 2 different people, 2 different workspaces. And that's a nice feature. Yeah, so that is the modified objects view feature that we have just seen in action in the demo. So it's a view built on top regular business components, custom business components, which are built on top of standard tables that you find in the Siebel database. Just, well, trying to visualize the very dynamic landscape of workspaces. If you have lots of developers, lots of objects, you want to keep track of what's going on. So the data is in the database, but there's no standard view currently showing that. So devpops just includes basically CIF files or object definitions you import in your repository, and you get that view and a little bit of OpenUI specials like that metadata, viewer, and comparison. Now that comparison we have seen in action as well. It uses the Workspace REST API, so only works on development environments and is limited to the parent object. Only the business services have been expanded as a demo to show the business service server script, so you can theoretically use it to compare differences in the server script level. And of course, nothing's holding you back from customizing devpops and extending that feature. So yeah, the Workspace Fast Inspect that we have already seen in action is one of the main features of devpops, and it's very popular. So you can right-click on the cube icon for the workspace in the application. You get a list of all the recent workspaces and the versions. You can click any of them to instantly open and inspect them. So the application switches. The application also has a banner always visible to show you which version and workspace is open. You can double click that banner to re-inspect. You don't have to go to the workspace view all the time. So this is of course a very, very experimental feature thanks to xapuk. The implementation is quite complex, and it's, well, use it with caution if you should decide to use it. Again, we have to make it very clear here that devpops is an educational open source code that comes with absolutely no guarantees. And if you want to be on the safe side, just use it as an inspiration and not as an extension to your application. The application menu is also one of the prime features, so showcasing how to create highly customizable dynamic menus using just Siebel Open UI. So if you click the custom button on the toolbar, debug icon, you get a classic menu with a bit of a twist, with all kinds of extra buttons, and it can be transformed into a toolbar style display, and it's even customizable by the user, so you can select which items you want to see and not. So again, use this as an inspiration for your Siebel Open UI development, and use devpops in a safe sandbox environment to see how to get this thing done. So a little bit of demo is in order. So here's the edit functionality. You can select or deselect checkboxes in the menu then. Let's turn off a few things like the SARM stuff here, test automation check. You save these changes and the menu is of course now shorter, and the menu can be dragged around if you want to in drag mode, like shown here, placed somewhere on the screen, or you can run it as a toolbar style, also shorter now because it has some features turned off. Now that might be another point for the second video, but here we point out that the menu is actually customizable. So there's a special customize function in the code where you can place your custom entries. So another showcase of writing JavaScript code that is in itself extensible. So you don't have to go to the very source. You can have an extension function, and that's a pattern you might want to adopt in your OpenUI customizations. Again, make sure you watch the second video for all the JavaScript nitty-gritty. Now we're saving the best for last here. So the X-ray is one of the key features of devpops. It's also available separately on the blacksheep GitHub. X-ray allows us to visualize metadata right in the UI. For example, X-ray show controls, shows control level information, control name, but also retrieves the pick applet, MVG applet, associate applet names for the controls and shows it to you right in the user interface. Then there's show BC fields. It's a second level of X-ray. I'll just turn on the volume and you get business component field information, field name, type, length required, calculated flags, and even shows the link and business component information on the screen, right in the view, right on the applets where you are. And nothing's holding us back from retrieving a third stage of the X-ray rocket and getting the table and column information or calculation expressions. So where the data actually comes from. And this could be invaluable and a huge time saver for any architectural work, for example, preparing interfaces, etc. And of course, we want to see a demo. So the first button in the menu is actually the X-ray show controls. So after clicking that, you see every column, list column, every button, every form applet item has its label now revealing valuable information. There's a tooltip generated. Here we see a pick applet. There's MVG applets. There's all sorts of information. Now BC fields, the second button shows the BC information right in the middle of the UI. Again, the tooltips now extended, so it's a cumulative of sorts, and show columns gives you the table and column information or the calculation expression. How cool is that? There's a reset button to get back to normal. And the silent mode we have already discussed previously. Now the silent mode also produces that aggregated tooltip. The tooltip is on the label, and we have seen the latest, hottest feature for silent mode at the beginning of this presentation was the X-ray data export to Excel or CSV. X-ray also has the flip switches to turn it always on. So that is after view navigation, the application will retrieve the information, show it instead of the labels. So you just stay in X-ray mode. So let's try that. And we flip the always on switch for business component fields and go to views. You already see in red, the red labels showing the business component field information all the time now. So it could be useful for taking screenshots or printing the screen. You can also do that for the Redwood banner if we want to prettify it a little bit. Now, with thanks to Jason, a Siebel friend and Siebel community member, we have SQL Tracing as one of the major, almost from beginning, feature in devpops. And of course, we shall see a demonstration of that feature. So here we go. Find the Start Tracing button, right-click it for options. And we have a file path for temporary files. You need to check that, of course. Retain the file. Don't delete it. SQL or allocation tracing, presentation model, additional tracing, slow query threshold. And we go. Notice the stop and view button on top. And now let's, well, create a record. This is an opportunity created and saved. Now going some navigation, triggering some SQL as we speak, querying, so insert, select, and for good measure, we shall delete the record, or drill down, and then delete the record. So we have all kinds of SQL produced during that part of the session. So at any time you can stop the tracing or view the trace file. So here we have the button to, well, view the trace file. And there's the trace file right in your browser. Wow, how cool is that? Including presentation model information as we wished. And the viewer has a few perks. On the bottom toolbar, you can see show charts. So it analyzes your select, insert, update, delete statement. Also, you can also see the RR queries. We have statistics, so another visualization of the top 10 tables, etc. The longest query. So that's also quite useful here. You can reset from that. and show the slowest queries. So there's a slow, well, not so slow, but it's the slowest in that session, the delete statement. And you can analyze the slow queries. You can hide the RR queries if necessary. And whatever you have in your editor, you can copy to the clipboard and, well, paste it in the text editor, save it for later or for analysis. So let's see if we can find that name of the opportunity. Trace me. There it is. The business service runner is another signature feature of devpops. It showcases how to create complex custom dialogues with OpenUI, dialogues that retrieve data from Siebel, in this case retrieving a list of business services, list of the methods, but you can of course expand that in your imagination, and then of course read that information, make another call to Siebel, and in this case call a business service, and devpops has a great framework for calling business services, and we see in the demo what the business service runner is capable of and how at the same time at learning OpenUI you see how you can make life of your developers more easy. So we start the business service runner from the button or menu item, and you have one pre-select actually, run workflow. We'll do that later. So you can later select your changes, and then you start typing, and there's a nice filtered list. So we look for the web engine transaction business service, get request info, because that's a function. You can just call it without entering arguments, just for the demo, and you get the output property set displayed in readable format and in native format in the box below, so you can copy it if need be. So let's just run it again, and it runs, of course. You can launch the property set viewer. Experimental, doesn't work everywhere, but for this one works quite nicely and shows all the child property sets here, especially, well, children of children, even that. So you can inspect the output property set easier any way you like it. So let's save that as a pre-select. So you can save as, it generates a name, or you can override it, and now it's part of the preset list. So when you click new, you can select it, run it again. You don't have to enter everything again. As you can see, it's a fast way of experimenting. And there's a workflow extension, so you can select any active workflow. Let's use the UPT process in a very easy workflow process. We can just invoke without any input, and we get a process instance ID, so we know it has run. So that's another type of preset, but it has a twist. You can select the workflow. Let's do something more complicated. EI Siebel adapter, easy to select. Select query page, and you see mandatory fields, mandatory arguments, and for example, integration objects is a drop-down with filter, so you can find the integration objects and run it and, well, and marvel at the output, or use the property set viewer, or copy the output, whatever is your poison. So you can imagine this speeds up development work quite a lot. You can also copy the eScript that you used to run in the background. Yes, devpops runs eScript. We'll see that in a moment, and you can copy that for later. With thanks to xapuk, you see the link in the description as well. We have also an about view on steroids in devpops. So and several other features are courtesy of xapuk, a great blog that you can find following the link. So let's briefly try the about view, the devpops version. So you can see all the applets here, and you can click to copy to clipboard. You can right click to expand and see even more information down to the individual controls. Very nicely done here. Yeah, and we mentioned the ability of devpops to run eScript from the browser. Wow, how cool is that? And that's, again, thanks to xapuk. We have the eScript playground, but we also have a business service method we can call with eScript input. And the eScript playground is a dialog on top of your application where you can test eScript before you commit it to the repository, of course. So let's see the eScript playground. You find the button or menu item and you can copy paste eScript or write eScript there. And then of course run it and see the output. Or also log anything you want. There's a special log function available. Let's change some of the code here. And run it again. Well, it ran, so there's no error message. Yeah, you can imagine this also speeds up your development cycle and makes it less cumbersome to develop, well, entire business services or parts of business services. Another feature provided by xapuk is the expression playground. So very similar to the eScript playground, but this time you can, well, experiment and test your Siebel query language expressions. And that's impressive in itself. So let's see a demo. So here we go. Click the button for the expression playground. And now we can, well, take anything that exists here, run it. There's an error, so the business component, the current active business component can't cope. So just go to different view, run it again. So the get profile attribute now works. Is Open UI is 1. Let's try another profile attribute. You can run any Siebel query language function here, but such as get profile attribute as list, and user responsibilities is actually a list of all the responsibilities of the user. Can be quite useful, as you can imagine. Now let's try something against the active BC. So referring to the name field here. So name like, does the name contain test? Yes, that's a current record. Does the name contain text? No. Okay, nice enough. So this really feels like a feature frenzy here. Next feature, a native devpops feature, so to speak, is the ability to connect to Server Manager from the comfort of your browser. Now that sounds like impossible, but it isn't. And we shall see in the demo how it works. So there's a button, Server Manager. You can enter a command already. And depending on your settings, takes a few seconds for it to come back. So there's a real Server Manager command line run on your server, and the result is displayed in a dialog box, which you can use to inspect the output. And you can also send additional commands like this one. List the params starting with SARM for an object manager. Let's submit it. Okay, here we go. SARM level currently 0. Now we can play that same game differently. So devpops also showcases the Siebel REST API. Now here we go out on a very dangerous limb, as we are using the let's say half or semi-documented API for the cloud gateway as it's known. And you can retrieve all sorts of information, and the showcase here is to retrieve the component statuses of the various servers in your enterprise and display them in your browser. So here we go. Click the button for server status. First time you have to enter your credentials. Must be Siebel administrator, responsibility, and you get the return of the REST call with the server status in green or not so green. Running components are bold, shutdown components are not bold. Nice. So what if we extend that connecting to Server Manager, etc., and reading files from the server a little bit further. And let's check out the SARM logging feature. So we have to, well, re-enable the menu items. We have deactivated them previously, so let's enable everything again. So now we have the start SARM, and first we go for the options, as we need to make sure that we have the correct settings, temporary folder, component, Siebel server. So it should be the same component that you're currently using. So that's important. And the maximum duration to trace, 5 minutes being the default. Save and go will first enable SARM for the current session or for the current object manager using the SARM level parameter. So you can see those parameter settings as just feedback from the server manager. So you can close that. So now SARM, and it's effective immediately. So inside that very session, you can now put load on the system. So this is a high-speed video now, as we are, well, invoking several workflows. So again, this is high speed. Watch the counter on top. And we are calling a very long failed workflow just on purpose. And now we are ready to stop SARM. And so it resets the parameters. So it's no longer tracking. And now we have the SARM viewer. Again, there are options. So we have some presets like area, chart, and the time stamps, which are defaulted to the 10 minutes past and in the future. And there's the chart view of SARM data from your server. Lots of EI transport, lots of workflow. Okay, so that's the first impression of what's going on, what has happened in that time frame. And we can run another one using sub area. And this is highly extensible, so you can fit it to your needs. But that's SARM data visualized right in your browser without the need to know SARM query, etc. So again, we see lots of workflow here. So let's run it one more time. This time we select group by workflow, and we can choose classic output. And this is the classic SARM output, and we can identify the bad guys. EI file transport, well, that's used a lot for SARM. And we can identify other business services. The submit order that took a long time, failed subsequently. Yeah, how cool is that? Okay, that really was a lot of information, and we've done it very quickly. So this is all of the features that you can currently find or be inspired by on the devpops Open UI example collection. Again, remember that devpops is a educational sample, and you shouldn't run any of it in any mission critical environment. Rather, you should use it as an inspiration and as a demonstration of what's possible with Siebel Open UI customization, and get some ideas how you can improve life for your Siebel developers at the same time, while also learning how to create useful stuff like menus and dialogues with Open UI. So the code is free, it's open source, but it comes with the MIT license. No strings attached, no guarantees whatsoever. Keep that in mind. And watch out for the second video. The link is in the description, where we go a little bit deeper into the actual code and the actual implementation of some of the features explained in this video. Well, thank you for watching. Take care and bye-bye.